The only clue to the whereabouts of Angie Yarnell is a postcard her mother Marianne had received, seeming to confirm the stunning news that Angie's husband Michael had broken to her a week earlier, that Angie had left him and run off with another man.
And it says, "Mom, Gary and I are on our way to visit his family in Texas. We'll call when we are settled. Love, Angie."
Angie had never mentioned anyone named Garrett or her mother, and it was unlike her daughter to just up and leave their little hometown of Holt Summit, Missouri, without at least saying goodbye.
Instantly, I knew something was very wrong.
And when months go by with no more word from Angie, Marianne comes to believe the postcard was a forgery and turns detective trying to find her.
I hung thousands of flyers. I drove to different states and hang flyers. I put them on windshields, in parking lots. I got billboards. I did everything I could with local TV.
All this while battling throat cancer.
I was physically really unhealthy. I mean, I lived on the verge of tears, and it was just really hard. Just really hard to not know where your person is, especially your child.
But for several years, Marianne makes no headway in her search for Angie until her heartbreaking plight comes to the attention of a local newspaper reporter.
It was sad to see that Marianne had done this enormous investigation on her own, so that's what really reeled it in for me.
Reve Edwards would write a story about Angie's disappearance for the Jefferson City News Tribune that would attract broad media attention. And something very odd and dramatic suddenly happens. 4 years after her daughter would go missing, Michael Yarnell would be named a person of interest in the case. But before police could talk to him, Michael himself would disappear.
I was told by his stepmother that he left town with his clothes tumbling in the dryer.
Never to return to the home he once shared with Angie.
I had no clue where he was.
And Marianne, who had always suspected Angie's husband may have had something to do with her disappearance, is convinced the media spotlight on the case had driven him into hiding.
I want to know where he is.
Because now you're really suspicious of his activity regarding your daughter's case.
Yes, he was the enemy.
Marianne and her new ally, Reve Edwards, figured the best chance of locating Yarnell is to have police list him as a missing person. And Reve had also arranged for a professional handwriting expert to examine that strange postcard Marianne had received after Angie first disappeared.
In these hooks seen in the bottom of the 4, that hook is also seen in the H.
Peggy Walla, who's worked on numerous criminal cases for police, would compare the postcard to other samples of Angie's handwriting, immediately noticing numerous differences. What jumped out at you when you were analyzing this postcard?
The first thing that jumped out at me was the shape of the ends of the S's. It was also lacking a hook at the bottom of the first stem of the capital letter H. The N formation was different. The G, the lowercase g formation, was different.
And she'd quickly come to an unquestionable conclusion.
So when I got the postcard and the samples, I said, she didn't write it.
But that's not all Peggy Walla would discover. After also comparing the writing on the postcard to that of Michael Yarnell on a handwritten statement he'd given to police at the time of Angie's disappearance. And bingo!
I said, this is the hand that wrote the postcard.
I wasn't at all surprised, not in the least bit surprised at that point.
What was your reaction when Peggy Walla came back and said, this postcard is a forgery and Mike Yarnell is the one who wrote it?
Absolute excitement, because I knew that was going to be our key to get him charged with something.
And from there it snowballed.
With that missing persons report that sleuths Marianne and Reve Edwards had filed on Michael Yarnell finally paying off, when he shows up in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Mike Yarnell had applied for a civilian job on an Air Force base there. And they did a background check and saw that he was listed as a missing person.
detaining him and alerting the Morgan County Sheriff's Office back in Missouri.
They sent 2 detectives down to talk to him.
Confronted with the results of that handwriting analysis by Peggy Walla, Yarnell would come clean about the postcard Marianne received a week after her daughter's disappearance.
Mike admitted that he sent that postcard with the thought of throwing law investigation off and giving Marianne a little bit of peace.
And after being extradited back to Missouri on felony charges of forgery and tampering with evidence, Yarnell would ultimately confess to killing his wife Angie during an argument at their home.
He said that they had gotten into a fight and it spilled out onto the deck.
And that she lunged toward him and that he put his arms up in an X motion in front of his face and shoved her.
He said she fell off the deck and hit her head on a rock and died instantly. And he said he sat with her for a while. Then he wrapped her up in a tarp and he put her in the car.
And drove to a nearby lake, put her body in a canoe, and rowed to a deserted little island.
But when he was right at the shore of the island, the boat fell over and she sank into the mud and he couldn't get her out, so he just left her there and went home.
As part of a plea deal Yarnell would make with prosecutors, he agreed to lead police to Angie's body.
They followed him to the island where he claims he lost her body. Nothing was ever found.
Which makes Marianne furious.
Nonetheless, they decided to give him the plea bargain anyway.
Prosecutors dropping murder and other charges against Yarnell in return for him pleading guilty to a much lesser charge of first-degree involuntary manslaughter.
He was handed 7 years, and he spent exactly 4 years in a minimum security prison.
After getting early release for good behavior.
Why would they agree to this plea deal? It seems ludicrous.
It does. It was sad to watch this man get by with killing his wife, mainly because he hid her body so well that they had no proof.
But prosecutors had told Marianne that even with his confession, they doubted they could win a murder conviction against Yarnell.
Even though he said he killed her, they had no evidence, and the evidence is literally her body.
And now, 15 long years since Angie was killed, her still grieving mother continues to search for her, saying she suspects Yarnell lied about how she died and believes her daughter's body is buried somewhere on the property where the couple used to live.
I've searched that property like you can't believe for so many years. I mean, I take a shovel and I go down there. I dig holes. This might be the place, you never know. I crawl under houses. I've been at the bottom of sinkholes. I've been in caves. I've sifted through big burn piles. I've looked in barrels. I do this. I look for Angie. Look at this.
And Marianne, who ties a ribbon around a tree at her home every year Angie remains missing, swears she won't stop looking for her daughter's body until she finds it.
I just need to bring her home. I won't quit. I won't quit looking. I will look for her. As long as I'm physically able, I go look for her.
Sadly, even if Angie's body is found, double jeopardy laws would prevent Michael Yarnell from being tried again. We did ask the Morgan County prosecutor and the Sheriff's Department for on-camera interviews. They both declined. The prosecuting attorney did, however, send us this written statement saying, "You're welcome to reach out to them being the Sheriff's Department, but my advice to them is that we cannot jeopardize other possible prosecutions by making public comment." I'm Chris Hansen. If you like this story, make sure you tune in every day to Crime Watch Daily. You can find where the show airs in your city at crimewatchdaily.com. Watch it live or record it on your DVR and watch it at night. And to all those criminals out there, remember, we are watching.